that 45 unit complex eventually became $800,000 in cash out in a refinance. And so again, I kept that one. And I refinanced and I made $800,000 just tax-free.
Welcome to the RealPropPro podcast, where strategy, innovation, and wealth converge to redefine real estate investing.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the RPP podcast. I'm your host, Ian Dietler. My real estate journey started back in 2016, right here in Sacramento, California, where I focused on fix and flips, joint ventures, and managing rehab projects. I've also built strong connections by networking at local and national REI events and learning from some of the best investors in the business. My goal with this podcast is simple: to bring you, the listener, unfiltered conversations with experienced investors who have been through the highs and lows of real estate investing. Whether you're just getting started or trying to scale your business, this show is all about helping you level up. What is RPP? RPP stands for RealPropPro, and our mission is to help people break into real estate investing through education, training, and easy-to-use strategies. While we have a strong focus on tax deed and tax lien investing, especially with our software, we also teach wholesaling, lease options, sub-2, seller financing, wraps, fix and flipping, and so much more. For those looking to go even deeper, we even offer an advanced training on our founder's unique strategy for select students. The goal is simple: give you tools to build long-term wealth in real estate. And if you want to learn more, please visit RealPropPro.com. Our guest today is none other than Boris Sanchez. He is the founder of Sandmore Investments and is a highly accomplished commercial real estate investor, broker, lender, and educator. Boris has owned over 1,500 multifamily units and is actively buying and selling commercial properties every month. With over 13 years of experience, he's been involved in over $1 billion in commercial real estate transactions. His Sandmore Investments team is on track to acquire another $35 million in commercial real estate over the next year. Beyond investing, Boris is also a mentor, helping both new investors break into multifamily and experienced investors scale their portfolio. Today, we'll dive into how he got started, his unique KISS methodology for multifamily investing, how he survived the brutal market shifts in Houston, Texas, and what's next for Sandmore Investments, including his expansion into London. Boris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on here. We've known each other for a little bit of time now. We've met up a couple times virtually, got to talk a little bit. And so just want to kick off this this talk with what got you started in real estate, or what was your first job even before that?
Oh, man. Okay, so we're going way back. My first ever business, I started when I was 7 years old. I guess I've always kind of been a little entrepreneurial. Yeah, it started early for me, you know. And that business is actually a food delivery business within my own school in Colombia, South America.
Can you talk a little bit about your journey through college and then your early career leading up to getting started in real estate investing in multifamily?
Absolutely. So, you know, obviously since that first business, I've owned a myriad of businesses, you know, through my high school, through my college, even through my master's degree. I've been a car dealer. I had a car dealership. I had a consultant business. I had an e-commerce business. I was drop shipping and shipping products all across the world. And yeah, I landed in real estate because of my family. They had a real estate company. Started with my mom in 2000. I didn't really like real estate at that point. It took me a while to join and I guess be convinced. I joined in 2011 after my master's degree, after I got home from London where I got my master's degree. And I started as a loan officer at that point. And I started house flipping, just like pretty much everyone else that starts. And then I was tired of it. Honestly, it was not my thing. I saw a lot of drawbacks, a lot of patience that I didn't have. It is very limiting when it comes to options. I can go into detail if you want on that, but all that led me to eventually start on commercial. And the way I really noticed commercial was because of my clients where they were flipping commercial, and I was getting the loans for them. And I even saw where I was getting financing for transactional wholesalers, which means that, they would buy something at a certain price, sell it right away, and then make millions. And so I was noticing that I was in the wrong side of the table on that one. And so I started with the first one. I bought my first complex. It was a 8-unit apartment complex.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about that first transaction, that first multifamily investment you made?
Sure. So I bought that back in 2013, and I bought it for $140,000. It was nowhere fancy. It was a dilapidated kind of crack house building, and really what was attractive to my lender, because lenders weren't really used to commercial hard money at that point. And so what was attractive is that there were two fourplexes side by side. And so I bought them both, and I bought them for $140,000. Using hard money, I reserved $60,000 in rehab, and immediately went to work. We finished about 6 months later, and started filling them up, and at a little above market rate. Because what I saw is that our product was really nice. It was brand new. We had really done a good job in the rehab. And so we started leasing them at $750 instead of the market $650. Again, it's not the best of markets. I know that's really, really cheap. And it was also 2013. And so, yeah, I wanted to make $1,000 at the end of the day. That was my goal. That was my cash flow goal. I wasn't really intending on being rich off of one deal. I knew that I was starting out, but I wanted to go to basics. And so I said, look, if I make $1,000 a month off of this deal, it's great. And I was making that. I was making more than that. So I was doing really well. But then I decided to refinance and get out of the hard money loan. And so one of the things that you have to do is get an appraisal. So I got a bank that approved me. They went ahead and did an appraisal. And lo and behold, keeping in mind that my cost was $210,000, I brought $10,000 to buy that deal. And so keeping in mind the 210, the valuation actually came back at $472,000. And I was blown away. I said, there's no way. There's no way this thing is worth $472,000. There's got to be something wrong here. I don't believe it. And so I started reading more into the appraisal and what makes it $472,000. Back when I started, there wasn't really a lot of people talking about commercial valuation versus residential valuation. I really think it was just kind of two separate worlds at that point. And so I was kind of breaking into something new. And so, I discovered why. I discovered the cash flow valuation method and the market valuation method of commercial real estate. And it made sense. But for me, I just really wanted to test the waters. So I put it for sale. And I said, you know what? All right, so if this thing is worth that much, let me just put it for $450,000 and see what happens. When, lo and behold, 2 weeks after I put it on for sale, I got a full price offer, $450,000. And the guy closed like a month after that. It was an amazing deal. I ended up, netting more than $250,000 in profit, if you include the rents and stuff that I made. And so, it was a great, great deal. And even for the bank actually that refinanced me took the guy's finance. They actually gave him the money for the purchase, and so it was a win-win all around. It was a great eye-opening experience. It for sure let me see the light when it comes to investing, and I've never made so much money in my life. Obviously, it changed my life.
From what I just heard, it sounds like you invested $10,000 of your own money and walked away with almost $300,000. What kind of timeline was that? How long of a time had passed from when you purchased it to when you sold it?
It was 1 year from when I purchased it to when I sold it. And doing going through the whole motions of rehabbing, upleasing, stabilization, putting it on the market, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then obviously finally closing. So it was about a year.
Something that you mentioned, I think that would be really good for listeners, especially beginning listeners or people that are in the residential space as opposed to the commercial apartment space. Can you talk about what you had mentioned as far as the evaluation of what a single family home is worth and how that's determined as compared to how a multifamily um, building or apartments are valued? Can you talk a little bit about the difference?
Absolutely. So I would say, knowing what I know now, residential valuations is very limited. They're very limited, and there's not a lot you can do about it. What I mean by that is that it only matters what your neighbor has sold for, or when you're doing a flip, what those houses neighbors have sold for. It's very subjective. If somebody decides to fire sell their property at a discount because they want to leave and go somewhere else, or maybe they're facing some kind of hardship, that's going to directly affect the valuation of your property. And so everybody knows that you take 6 comps around the same subdivision, or in a limited proximity to that property, and you take the sale comps of the last year or so. And so it has a problem because obviously if you want to rent it, that's not included. You're whatever you're renting it for, no matter if you say you take a $300,000 house, which I know in California it doesn't exist, but here in Texas I know it does. And you take $300,000 house and you fill it up with a tenant paying $30,000 a month. It's still at the end of the day a $300,000 house. That
Sorry,
income.
$3,000 a month, right?
Well, no, even if you rent it at at $30,000 a month, it's still gonna be a $300,000 house. You see what I mean? That valuation doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Whatever income that you're making is great for you because you're making $30,000 a month. What I'm saying is that valuation doesn't matter. Even in the rise of, Airbnb and short-term rentals, it doesn't matter. It's still very much a just comp, kind of business, kind of valuation, kind of appraisal. And so that's what I really like about commercial is that in commercial you have both types of valuations. You take into account what the property is making. It's like a business, really. If it's like a steakhouse, the steakhouse has to sell so many steaks a day in order to be valued at something, right? Same thing here. That's what people don't or fail to see is sometimes that commercial really is a business that you buy and sell. Well, a home is more of a homestead for people, even if you're renting it out and making money. Even if you're renting it, day by day with Airbnb. And so that's something that is very limiting when it comes to investments because you don't have direct control of what that home's value is, and you just have control over your own investment. But you should be able that the homes should be valued for cash value if they're rented. But that's just not accepted in this grand scheme of things.
So can you explain to the listeners how the value of a commercial property, as far as like a apartment complex or something, how is that actually? How do appraisers actually figure out the value of those properties?
And so there's two types of value, or really three if you want to consider replacement cost. So replacement cost is the one that, you basically what would it cost to build brand new? And that's what it's valued for, at least in that third type of valuation. The first type really is market value, which you take comparables much like residential, but you take them in the same class. So in most areas, obviously, you're not going to have the same kind of buildings right next to each other or in the same subdivision, unlike homes. So you take what we call classes. The class system is a way to kind of qualify a property based on the age, based on the neighborhood that it's in, and based on the location and the shape of it. And so we have classes A, B, C, and D. A being the very best, and D being, pretty much destroyed, because that's kind of like what I kind of like to refer to. Class C and Class D are areas, kind of blue collar areas, properties built older than 1990, and you find a lot of value add in those kind of properties. And so you have to compare a Class C to another Class C, right? And so that's why the comps actually, I guess, they don't really matter as far as proximity goes. It really matters more as to what kind of class they're in. And so market value and comparables are still considered in commercial, but that's just one type of value, the market value. The other type of value is obviously the cash flow value, wherein you take into account the income, the operating income minus the operating expenses, and you come up with something called the net operating income, the NOI. You compare that to a cap rate, which is the cap rate. It is a ratio which really tells folks how much a property would be making if it was paid cash. Okay, and so not to confuse a lot of folks out there, and I don't want to get too technical because I don't want to confuse folks. But yes, it is a benchmark in which you compare property to property based on how much return that property is making at the current moment. So it's more of a sales tool than anything else. And so that cap rate divided by the NOI will give you the value of the property. And so as you can probably infer, you can increase the income of the property, lower the expenses, and then you would increase the NOI, which then would directly affect the valuation of the property upwards. That's called forced appreciation, by the way.
Yeah, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about that, because I know that's something you're really passionate about. Okay, well, kind of moving on to like a kind of a new subject. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's really important to know the difference between how to value a single family home as compared to a multifamily home. So thank you for explaining that to our listeners. A lot of new investors wonder if they can go straight into multifamily or if they should start with single family homes first. What's your take on that?
That is a very good question, and one that I get asked a lot. And so my favorite thing to say is you should start in residential. And people usually gasp when I say that. But Boris, well, why aren't you so against residential? Why would you start there? Well, the thing that people need most is education. And a lot of self-learning. You have to learn about what kind of manager you are, what kind of project manager, what kind of investor, and what kind of landlord you are. And so, and all these things you're going to be learning from the experience of construction and project management, right? Not to mention, obviously, tenancy and landlording. But what I mean by that is you should start in a home and kind of trying to put together the labor, the materials, the vision of this house, maybe do a couple of flip homes first and see how it goes. Most likely you're not going to make any serious money from it. You're probably going to lose some, and that's okay, because you learn a lot about, like I said, yourself and your crew and what kind of project you want to run. Commercial properties are obviously in nature way more costly. They're bigger projects, and they have the potential to completely wipe out people financially. And I have seen it time and time again, especially in those last 2 years. And so you really want to pay attention to all that and make sure that you're not going into a marathon not knowing how to run. If you gotta know how to walk first before you can run, and then you can run a marathon. And so you got to just take it easy and be patient with yourself. I would say, do a lot of classroom learning if you can, or partnering up with somebody that's more experienced, and then taking on a construction project, and then taking on something small in multifamily. What a lot of people fail to do is actually they miss a very important step, and that is owning their own multifamily properties. A lot of folks, they go directly from home flipping straight into syndication. They go straight into, all right, yeah, I got $25,000, $50,000. Now I'm going to put it with somebody that knows what they're doing. That is not what you should do. What you should do is experience what it's like to own apartment complexes and commercial real estate. I'm not just talking apartment complexes. It can be a retail building. It could be, a shopping center. It could be a small office building. It could be a self-storage building, which I also have experience in. And so you have to make sure that you know what it's like before you can trust and put your money with other people that, and ask the important questions. Like what are you going to do with this? What's your opinion about this and that and fees? And are you going to do this and that to the property? You should ask this of your syndicator before you invest your money passively. You should be an active investor. And that's not talked about enough in this business. I'm a fanatic of owning your own properties. They've changed my life, like I've said in the past. From my first deal on to my biggest deal, they've all made really, really good money. And so why would I need to put my money into with somebody else? I believe anybody and everyone should be able to do it on their own, even full-time employees, which my clients are, my students. And so everyone says they want or has the excuse of like, I don't have enough time. But if I tell you that that time has the potential to completely change you and your family's lives, you're probably going to dedicate more time to it, right? And so it is very important to learn and to take the steps needed and to actually go through the pains. It's not all roses and rainbows. It's going to be some pain, some stress. But at the end of it all, come out, wealthier, come out more experienced, more knowledgeable, and ready to take on another project.
I've heard you talk in the past about the KISS method. Keep some and sell some. Can you break that down, and can you explain to the listeners what this strategy looks like in practice?
Sure. So a lot of folks are knowledgeable and they know about the BRRRR method, the BRRR method, the buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat method. And that's one strategy within real estate. When I mentioned that there's different strategies within real estate, and I think that is a flawed one, and I think that one is very limiting, much in the way that residential is limiting. I think a lot of gurus like to teach limiting things instead of options. Any good investor should have options available to them, and so one of the great ways to do so is to know that there are options for you. And in commercial real estate and in residential real estate, obviously you have options. And so I invented my own strategy called the KISS method, KSSSS, 4 S's, KSSS. Keep some, sell some, scale. Is that? Yeah, I guess that's 5 S's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep some, sell some, scale. And that's because you do want to keep some. As I have said in the past, cash flow is very good. Another podcast I've done, I would say cash flow is very good to maintain your wealth. You want to make sure that you're keeping some, and for tax reasons as well. You want to make sure to depreciate these things and be able to get rid of your capital gains taxes, other wins that you've had throughout the year. And that's when you sell some. You're going to have some capital gains that you can offset by the depreciation of the ones that you're keeping. So keep some, sell some, right? So with cash flow, you're going to want to keep some, and with for appreciation and forced appreciation, you're going to want to sell some in order to build wealth. So forced appreciation is a wealth builder. Cash flow is a wealth maintainer. And you just don't want to maintain your current level of wealth. You want to build it. So that's why you have to sell some. But again, you have the taxes in mind, so that's why you have to keep some. Keep some, sell some, and you scale. So with the money that you're making from you selling your properties, you're going to want to put into larger and larger properties to experience economies of scale, right? You're going to want to keep them in larger and larger complexes. Or if you're just sticking to residential real estate, then at least you can invest in a portfolio or something like that, portfolio of properties where you can manage them closely. So you definitely want to scale. You don't want to stay in the same kind of bracket. You always want to make sure to move up. And I see no better way than selling property. And yeah, some people kind of get scared by that because of the taxes. But again, if you're meeting with your CPA and you have a strategy to kind of beat the capital gains, then and you're going to be that better for it.
Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that in regards to how how it helps build that long-term wealth? How is the KISS method building long-term wealth?
So the KISS method obviously is a lot like what I've experienced throughout my career. I bought one, I sold it, that example that I gave in the past about my first deal. I sold it, and I didn't blow the $250,000 that I made from that deal. Obviously, I got rid of some debt, but I started buying more property from it, and I started learning about what it is that I did right, what I did it wrong. I ended up buying two more deals, one 8-unit complex and one 7-unit complex. And so I did the same in both of those. But then I noticed that I was actually headed to a big tax bill, And so I went and I started keeping some as well. So my 8-unit, I think that one netted me like $200,000. The 7-unit, it netted me around the same $175,000. So I bought more property with that. With the 8 units profit, I even bought a 45-unit complex. So I was experiencing scale. That 45-unit complex eventually became $800,000 in cash out in a refinance. And so, again, I kept some. I kept that one. And I refinanced, and I made $800,000 just tax-free completely by refinancing and cashing out, while I was also selling other property at the same time. So, again, experiencing that keep some, sell some, but still scaling up. And a good way to test yourself to see if you really want to scale is if you ask listeners, if you bought and sold property and made $250,000, what would you spend that on? A lot of people will say, well, I'll buy myself a house, a car, and great. But then what have you done? Not really. Well, you invested in a house, and you could possibly maybe cash out of that, but at the end of the day, it's your house, and you've spent it on stuff. You should take about a quarter of that, you should take a quarter of that, spend it on yourself, and spend it on debt and everything, and the rest of that, 75%, you should reinvest it and scale, You should scale up and make wealth. What you're after is generational wealth, not tomorrow wealth. That's not going to last.
Yeah, so it sounds like kind of holding, like basically the scaling aspect of it and holding more and more units is how you're going to build that long-term wealth, correct?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you're going to want to hold on to raise the value, force appreciate, fight taxes, and then on the other side, you're going to want to sell in order to scale up and to obviously make wealth.
That's a great strategy. I always love hearing you talk about that. It's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Last we spoke in November of 2024. You were very open about some of the challenges you've been facing at that time. Can you kind of talk to the listeners about what you were going through and what your business was experiencing?
Well, I mean, just like everything, our business is very held to the market. So when you have no buyers and nobody lending, it's tough to sell property. And so we ended up, doing very well because some of the property we were holding had a lot of equity in it. And so while all the other property were kind of brokering and reselling, was not selling, and it was very difficult to actually get deals to actually buy, because buyers were still even very held on to the highs of the 2021 and 2022. They still wanted, the very top, and we were buying down here. And so that delta is the ugliest thing I've ever experienced in my financial career, I guess, because we were still buying at the height before COVID, and deals were being sold and traded, and then, the economy was nice, and the rates were acceptable. And then COVID came, and it was just kind of a scare, but it really wasn't, because people were still trading. But what happens during this nasty delta time where buyers think that there's worth so much and sellers think it's worth down here, Buyers think it's the opposite. Buyers think it's, it's not worth much. Sellers think it's worth a lot. You have a ugly delta, whether it's not really a buyer's market, it's or a seller's market. It's neither, And so it was difficult to get deals under contract then, and so we had to give really, really good deals on the stuff that we already held in order to kind of make income and still be able to float on by. A lot of businesses close their doors. A lot of commercial real estate brokerages and other wholesale shops, they closed their doors, and we were kind of proud to just kind of coast along.
Was there were the interest rates rising a factor, and also was insurance rates in your local market also a factor?
Big time. Yeah, big time. So not only, the rates were rising, to something horrible. So bank lending was just out. Um, it really kind of put a chokehold on the market itself as well. Because then you had the widening of the delta that I just spoke about. But then insurance costs were going up because here in Houston, we've experienced a lot of freezes, hurricanes, tornadoes, derechos, everything, as well as the rest of the country. It just seems that, it's been happening more lately. And so insurance rates have really gone to the roof. I think a lot of carriers went out of business as well. And so, yes. And also, you also put in the fact that property taxes have been going up steadily as well. And even more than steadily, they've been multiplying in a lot of cases. And so it really puts a lot of choke on the business of commercial real estate. And so we experienced that. But again, I think, if you navigate it and you know enough, and you kind of give good deals to people and buyers, the few buyers that are left, then that made us a really good brokerage and a very good investment house.
The next question is, I know that you don't really do as much, or maybe not any syndication, but I feel like you have a pretty good finger on the pulse as far as syndications and what's working and what's not. Can you talk a little bit about how these changes over the last couple of years really got a lot of syndicators in trouble?
So syndication, for those that don't know, is when you crowdfund and you put together deals as a group, right? It is an SEC kind of guided security, because at the end of the day, you're offering, to make money on your money as a group. That's called a security, and so it's held by the SEC and regulated by them. And so what ended up happening right before COVID was that a lot of deals were being put together by folks just wanting to squeeze an extra ounce of value from all these properties. They wanted to, from one group that didn't charge parking fees, and the next group wants to charge parking fees, and they want to charge pet fees, and they want to nickel and dime folks. And because of the effects I explained previously, because of forced appreciation, they wanted to experience that as well. They want to kind of squeeze all the value they could out of a lemon, out of a property. And eventually it's going to implode, because there's only so much value that you can squeeze before something has to give. Either the market, either people are not buying, either, something's got to happen. And so I really believe it was a bubble that's not spoken about enough, where folks, it was just so easy to put deals together, money together. Actually, even before and after COVID, before this kind of like period of downturn that we just went through, it really was easy to raise money and charge fees for it, and charge, finder's fees and all kinds of fees to the group that was investing in a certain property. And so, you had a lot of investments go down. A lot of folks that didn't get paid, didn't get their investment back, and the property went to foreclosure or went down, or, or closed. And I feel really bad for those people, because they believed in the best. But also, that's another reason why I believe in active ownership of your own properties, because you have more of a hold on what, your own money is doing. Not to mention that you're buying a property. At the end of it all, that property is going to be worth something, whether it's got, zero tenants or full of tenants. And so it is something that I still, I'm a critic of syndications. I really think a lot of folks are irresponsible, even though they swear that they're not. And at the same time, I really do see that there are a lot of folks out there that are supremely good investors doing syndications, and this is not about them. They're doing well now. I got some really close friends that are doing that, and ever since the start, I wish them well. I just don't believe in the fact that folks should invest their money and put it together with a group where they can be doing it themselves and making many more times what their return was that they were offered.
Yeah, so if you could elaborate a little bit, or just, I kind of had a question. You were talking about sometimes people would put in their money in one of these syndications, and sometimes they would go south. Have you ever heard of someone putting money into a syndication and just losing that entire investment? Or how does that work when the syndication fails?
Yes, I have lots of people. Lots of people have, they've lost their money, and there's not a lot you could do for it because at the end of the day, you knew what the risks were, or you supposedly knew. Um, and these guys, for one reason or another, the syndicators, the general partners, they did all they could. I'm not saying some of them did it like fraudulently. I'm sure that happens at some point, but I am sure that a lot of them did not intend on fraud. But at the same level, either way, the folks lost their money because of something that happened. Rates went through the roof, and maybe they couldn't get a loan fast enough to bridge the gap. Maybe their occupancy went really south, and they couldn't maintain the property afloat. And so they just they went through foreclosure, and folks just lose all their money. It's just really what happens. There's nothing really that happens afterwards. Just saying, too bad, so sad. It depends on what the syndicator chooses to do at that point, I guess. Like, hey, well, let me pitch you something else that in a better position that can make it up for the last one. I'm not sure. I guess there was some of that, but again, I don't really mess with that because it's just the same kind of problems over and over. The market is the market. It's going to go up and down, sideways, and so I believe the only kind of better control that you can have is owning your own property.
What were some of the key moves that you made or your company made to stabilize the portfolio?
Um, well, once we saw the costs rising, like insurance, and taxes, we obviously shopped those around. We'll shop the insurance around. We did what we could on taxes, protesting taxes and the valuation with the county. But we started resorting to other programs such as Section 8. And we started selling other property that still had, pretty good equity in it. And so, yeah, we launched all the tools available at our disposal in order to kind of stay afloat and make sure that we don't go the same direction that some other folks went.
And what lessons did you take away from that experience?
I mean, I was glad that I was kind of self-taught, that I went through the pains of teaching myself, and that I went through the pains of learning the hard way what it takes to, own property. I was glad that I kept property that had a lot of equity into it because it made me millions, even in a down market. And so, yeah, I was glad, and also taught me that I don't know everything. And even though I love to teach real estate and teach real estate investments, I'm always a student of the market, and the market has a way to surprise you always. And so I'm constantly learning. I'm always evaluating and learning from others and learning from my own mistakes.
And you'd mentioned earlier that you're doing some storage unit investments. When did that start, and how's that going for you?
Yeah, it went really well. I just sold my property that I just had. It was 252 units, but it was really nice. I bought it for $1.1 million back in 2022, August of 2022. And it had extra 2 acres, it had extra 3 acres actually. And with 1 acre, we kind of expanded the parking lot and made outside, uncovered storage, which is mostly, well, more than likely like a parking spot really for people. So we made units like that. We expanded the operations. We went completely with no personnel. So everything was virtual. Folks were able to rent their own unit that way. And it was really well. I just sold it for $2 million. $2 million flat. And so it was a great experience. Something that I put into the property probably less than $100,000 total. Painting, extra, parking lot, which is made out of what's called True Grit, which is like a plastic slash pebble parking lot. And so it was a really good experience. It's profitable. Went through the pain of getting everything converted from journals, like written down journals, to full-fledged AI type management. And that was a pain. Trust me, it was not easy. But at the end of the day, it was very profitable.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how some people run their businesses. Like you said, handwritten journals, the receipts that have the two different color papers so they can rip it off and give them, the other,
The
the
invoices, yep.
yellow and pink paper and stuff like that. Yeah, just crazy what how some people are running their businesses. So if we could take a little bit of time, can you talk a little bit about the mindset that's involved in being a successful real estate investor, and what's involved in, like, what are important things for listeners to know about overcoming some failures, right? I feel like a lot of investors get into the real estate game, they try it out, maybe something happens, and then they throw up their arms and they say, this real estate investing stuff doesn't work. So can you talk a little bit about the mindset and what's required to be, a real estate investor long term?
Absolutely. Me and my peers talk about this all the time. Other guys that kind of do the same thing that I do. It is something that is not for the faint of heart. Making the money is great, and that's the best part, right? That's the reward. But the risk, the stress, the work behind it can take a toll on you and your mind and your family if you let it get out of control. I believe you have to always have the winner's mentality, the winner's mindset, the end goal in mind. You have to be prepared to plan for the worst, always. I hate to be a pessimist, but I love to plan. You know what I mean? I love to plan for the worst, that is. And so, because that has a tendency to always pleasantly surprise you, you know? And so I kind of, I want to tell you, folks, basically, it's not all roses and rainbows. There are going to be times that you're going to want to quit and you're going to want to just sell everything, that you're going to be just tired of everything and everybody. And it is like life, life is like that in a lot of ways. Except this would really test you. And so you're not counting on the salary. You're not counting on that monthly cash flow rental check. Sometimes it doesn't come. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? How are you planning to be prepared for that? And how's your mindset going to be prepared for that, right? That says a lot about what the next steps are. If you're not in the right mindset, you're not going to have the right mind to plan down the road and be prepared to deal with the punches, because sometimes you do have to take the punches. Sometimes you can't avoid them, and it is all about knowing that those are coming, and knowing how you're going to react.
Can you talk about a deal in your experience that went south, and kind of how you were able to either get things back on track or, walk away? Can you talk about one of the worst deals you've had to deal with?
Sure. So there's one deal in particular that I always like to tell my students, and that's property here, 3801 Brewster Street in Houston. It was a 12-unit apartment complex, and it completely tested me in every single way. I got screwed over by several different contractors, both small and big contractors. I had gotten broken into that property several times, and stolen all the materials. We found cash registers in the ground full of cash, which isn't a good thing, believe me, because the police are going to shut you down for a while. Um, and not to mention, there was a flood, there was a fire with no insurance. And so I lived the whole market, the whole project of bad news cycle in this project alone. Um, as it were over the span of like 8 months, there were just bad news after bad news. Honestly, it got to the point where there was just, I was expecting the bad news, and it was such a like a nightmare project that my friends even they hated hearing about it so much that they actually literally hired a priest to come bless the place, and spray kind of holy water everywhere, because it was just it was just a nightmare. And the funny thing is, right after that happened, we found a unique way to actually get back on track. We had bought this property around $350,000, and the original budget was to spend another $250,000 renovating it. But because of all the things I just mentioned, our budget ballooned to like over $1 million. And so, because of my knowledge, because I knew that the only way to save this project from really going off the rails was to actually lease it to somebody else in a triple net basis. So somebody else takes on the expenses. That's called a master lease. And we found that exact client that wanted to lease it that way. And it was a clinic for sober living. So where, folks go to kind of get sober from drugs and alcohol. And that was the tenant. They actually leased out all 12 units. And because we had nothing but income and no expenses, our valuation ballooned to over $1.2 million, and thereby saving the project and making sure that I learned a very valuable lesson, which was commercial real estate has a funny way to actually save you, even at the worst times, if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it has the power to wipe you out.
Did you already know about the master lease, or is that something that you learned about to kind of save the project?
I knew about it from the standpoint that I knew, from going back to basics, if I lease it out and have nothing but income and no expenses, that's gonna balloon the valuation, right? And that's exactly what we deployed in this case in order to save the project.
If we could shift gears a little bit, last time we spoke, you were talking about maybe changing the strategy or changing the market. So, what's the strategy for growing Sand more internationally?
Oh man, that's a really good question. So we have noticed there's a need for real estate software that's next generation. And so we're heavily investing into that right now. I can't say a lot about it right now, but let's say that our Sandmore's future is in software.
Oh,
And
wow.
software.
Okay. I thought we were going to talk a little bit about investing in London, but that was a secret, little secret I wasn't expecting to hear from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm always going to be a real estate investor.
Hmm.
An investor and a entrepreneur nonetheless, like I've explained in the beginning of the video. And so, yeah, I'm enamored with real estate. I love it, but I want to also be I want to contribute to it, to contribute to making it better, as well as invest into an asset that's could potentially be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so that's what we're investing in. But you're not incorrect. The my future, for as far as I can see, is I will keep on investing in commercial real estate, because it's been a big wealth maker for me, and it would be foolish for me to actually let this go, um, and just go into something else. And so, in some way, shape, or form, I'm always investing. And yes, I am investing in the UK, in London. I have several properties there, with a partner of mine. I really see that market as a big opportunity and a very, very attractive market for tenants. And so, yeah, obviously it's great for diversification as well, which I'm heavily a fan of. So yeah, we're gonna keep on investing both here and in the UK, and investing in several things, and just kind of see what happens.
As far as the U.S. market, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for multifamily in the next 5 to 10 years?
I really think that's a great question, by the way. I really think that folks who are prepared to own property, and have educated themselves to, be really good real estate investors, there is a huge market out there, especially right now, to invest at this current moment. Prices are cheap. Property is cheap right now. If in 2019 or 2022 you were scratching your head wondering why you missed out, you're missing out right now. So there is a giant opportunity right now, for folks who want to get in and invest either on their first home or their first apartment complex, or just, a multiple of both. Um, and, because prices have been cheap. Like, I think last time I saw these prices, it was back in 2014 when I first started, you know, 2013, 2014. And so, when they say, "Oh man, I missed the boat," no, you didn't. You just were not prepared for when it comes around. And if you're not prepared right now to look at deals and to start buying, I would get there quick. Get that education you need. Learn how to run before you can, before you can run a marathon. And then, you can invest, and then you can, build your wealth like you've always wanted to do.
Is there any way for people to get a hold of you, or is there any type of product or service that you want to promote on the show today?
Absolutely. I'll plug my own commercial real estate investment university. And so that's called CREU.online. That is like I said, commercial real estate university, where I've filmed over 30 hours of content, and you can learn at your own pace there. I break down every single strategy that I've ever learned, give several different examples of, stuff that I invested in, the good, the bad, all the mistakes that I've made. I break down the contract, the vocabulary, terminology, and like I said, strategy on how to always make a kind of a winning case for a property. CREU.online, crew.online.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about our free weekly book giveaway. Each week we're going to give away a real estate, business, or investing book for free. So here's how to enter. Just like this episode on however you're listening to the podcast, and comment below with the book you'd like to receive. You have 5 days after the air date to enter, and one lucky winner will have one of the books shipped directly to their house. So some of the ones we have, these are some of the ones we have to give away. Boris, any of these sticking out to you?
Believe and Achieve. That's a great one. Yeah. Oh, well, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of course. Great ones. You have some really good
Yeah, we
ones
got
there.
Rich Dad Poor Dad 1 and 2. The second one is called the Cash Flow Quadrant.
Cash Flow
And
Quadrant.
we got
Yeah.
the 10x rule. Um, so just comment on which one you'd like to have, and one lucky winner will send it straight to your house. One final thing is, if today's episode teaches you anything, is that real estate is never a straight path. Markets shift, deals go sideways, interest goes up and down, insurance goes up and down. Economies change. But the investors who adapt and push through are the ones who are going to come out stronger on the other side. Boris has shared with us some brutal challenges he's faced in his company in the past couple of years, but he didn't quit. He adjusted, he found solutions, and he came back better than before. So I hope some of this stuff has helped the people here today. And if they're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I should get into multifamily or the markets are too tough right now, just remember, there's never a perfect time. The only way to learn is to get into the game. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks.